The notification sound from my phone cut through the silence of my cramped apartment like a rusty knife. 3 a.m., and I'm sitting here in my boxers, staring at the glowing screen while the rest of the world sleeps peacefully. But peace isn't something I've known much of lately. My name is Nick Harper, and 6 months ago I thought I had everything figured out. I was married to Lena, the most ambitious woman I'd ever met, and we were planning to open a restaurant together using my savings and her PR expertise. Then she decided my younger brother Eric was a better investment than me. The Instagram notification showed their latest post from Harper Co. Bistro, my family name, twisted into their little love nest of a business. The photo showed Eric in a chef's coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent, his arm around Lena as she smiled that practiced smile I used to think was genuine. The caption made my stomach turn. Another successful night at the city's hottest new spot. Some people are born to succeed, while others flip burgers in dive joints. We know which category we belong to. I scrolled through the comments. Dozens of hearts and fire emojis from people who used to be our mutual friends. People who now pretended I didn't exist. But what really twisted the knife was finding the email thread I'd forgotten about. Back when Lena and I shared a cloud account, before she bothered to change the password. Months of messages between her and Eric, dating back to when she was still sharing my bed and planning our future. Nick's restaurant idea is cute, but Eric's family connections could really take us places. Your brother is so naive. He actually thinks I married him for love. Can't wait to see his face when we announce the bistro. He'll realize he never stood a chance. I set the phone down and walked to the window overlooking the street. My reflection stared back, 34 years old, stubble that needed attention, eyes that had seen too much disappointment lately. But underneath the exhaustion, something else was building. Something that felt like the slow burn of a perfectly seasoned cast-iron pan. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My restaurant, the Junction, occupied the ground floor of a converted train station on the edge of downtown. It wasn't fancy. Exposed brick walls, mismatched chairs, an open kitchen where I could watch every customer's reaction to my food. Real food, not the pretentious nonsense Eric served to impress people who cared more about being seen than tasting something authentic. I'd opened 3 months ago with my life savings and a loan that kept me awake most nights. The first week was rough. The second was worse. But slowly, word started spreading. People who appreciated honest cooking over Instagram-worthy presentations began showing up. Maya Rodriguez, my sous chef, had stuck with me through the worst of it. She was 26, sharp-tongued, and could dice an onion faster than most people could blink. When I hired her, she'd looked around the empty dining room and said, "Either you're crazy or you're onto something. I'm betting on crazy, but I need the job." The next morning, I was prepping vegetables when Maya arrived with coffee and her usual morning attitude. "You look terrible," she announced, tying her apron with practiced efficiency. "Did you spend another night stalking your ex on social media?" "Research," I corrected, though we both knew she was right. "Know your competition." "Competition?" Maya laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Nick, they serve $20 salads to people who think expensive means good. You make food that actually matters. There's no competition." But she was wrong about that. There was definitely competition, and it was personal. The lunch rush was steady. Nothing spectacular, but enough to keep the lights on. I was manning the grill when I spotted a familiar face through the pass window. Sam Torres, my old friend from college, sliding into a corner booth. Sam had become a private investigator after washing out of the police academy, and his timing felt too convenient to be accidental. "Nick," he called out when I emerged from the kitchen, "we need to talk." I poured 2 cups of coffee and joined him. Sam looked uncomfortable, which wasn't like him. He was usually the guy who delivered bad news with a shrug and a joke. "I've been hearing things," he said finally, "about Lena and Eric, about their plans for you." "What kind of plans?" Sam pulled out his phone and showed me a series of photos. Lena and Eric at City Hall talking to someone in a suit. Eric handing over what looked like official documents. More photos of them meeting with a man I recognized as a health inspector. "They're not content with just stealing your wife and your family name," Sam said. "They want to make sure you fail completely." The coffee turned bitter in my mouth. "What are you talking about?" "Fake health inspection, scheduled for tomorrow. They've got someone on the inside who owes them a favor. The plan is to find violations that don't exist and shut you down during your busiest week." I stared at the photos, feeling something shift inside me. For months, I'd been playing defense, trying to build something while they tore me down from the sidelines. But defense doesn't win games. "Sam," I said slowly, "how would you feel about playing a little offense for once?" His grin was sharp as a fillet knife. "I was hoping you'd ask." The Riverside Food Festival happened every August, transforming the downtown waterfront into a maze of vendor booths and hungry crowds. I'd signed up months ago, back when I still believed in fair competition and honest business practices. Now, staring at my modest setup next to Eric and Lena's elaborate display, I realized how naive I'd been. Their booth looked like something from a cooking show: professional banners, matching uniforms, a sound system playing jazz at just the right volume. My booth was a folding table, a portable grill, and a handwritten sign Maya had made the night before. "David and Goliath," Maya muttered, arranging our ingredients with military precision. Except David had better funding. Lena spotted me from across the way and whispered something to Eric that made him laugh. They were both wearing matching chef coats with Harper Co embroidered in gold thread. Seeing my family name on his chest made my jaw clench. The festival opened at noon, and within minutes their booth had a line of customers drawn by the flashy presentation. My setup attracted curious looks but few takers. I focused on what I did best: cooking food that actually tasted good instead of just looking impressive. Around 2 p.m., everything changed. Jenna Walsh, the food critic for the city paper, approached my booth with the cautious expression of someone expecting disappointment. She was in her 40s, with graying hair and intelligent eyes that had probably seen every culinary trend come and go. "What's your story?" she asked, watching me flip a burger that had been ground fresh that morning. "No story," I replied, adding caramelized onions and a slice of aged cheddar. "Just trying to make something real." She took a bite, and I watched her expression change. The polite interest became genuine surprise, then something approaching delight. "This is exceptional," she said. "The beef quality, the seasoning. Where did you learn to cook like this?" Before I could answer, a commotion erupted at Eric's booth. A customer was complaining loudly about undercooked chicken, waving the offending piece in the air. Eric was trying to smooth things over with his practiced charm, but more customers were starting to look concerned. Jenna glanced over at the scene, then back at my burger. "Interesting timing," she murmured. Within an hour, word had spread. People who'd tried my food were bringing their friends. The line at Eric's booth dwindled while mine grew. I caught glimpses of Lena's face growing darker as the afternoon progressed. Around 4 p.m., our portable generator suddenly cut out. "What the hell?" Maya checked the connections while I tried to restart the engine. Nothing. The generator was stone cold, like someone had flipped a switch. "Problem, brother?" Eric appeared beside our booth, wearing a concerned expression that didn't reach his eyes. Up close, I could see he'd gotten soft since college. Too many expensive dinners and not enough real work. "Generator trouble," I said evenly. "That's rough. These old machines can be so unreliable." He kicked the generator gently with his foot, and I noticed his knuckles were scraped. "Maybe you should invest in better equipment." That's when I saw the loose wire hanging from the back of the unit. Someone had deliberately disconnected the power supply. "Maya," I said quietly, "fire up the backup propane burner." "We don't have a backup." She caught my expression and nodded. "Right, the backup." While she improvised with a camping stove we'd brought for emergencies, I walked around to the back of Eric's booth. Their generator was humming along nicely, powering lights, speakers, and refrigeration units. It would be a shame if something happened to it. I found their power cable and gave it a gentle tug. Not enough to damage anything permanently, but enough to interrupt the connection. Their booth went dark just as a crowd of potential customers approached. Eric appeared at my shoulder within seconds. "Having problems, Eric?" I asked innocently. "You son of a—" He caught himself, glancing around at the families nearby. "Fix it." "Fix what? I'm just standing here." His face flushed red. "You think you're clever? You think this changes anything?" "I think you should focus on your own problems," I replied, walking back toward my booth. But Eric wasn't done. He grabbed my shoulder and spun me around, his voice rising. "You're pathetic, Nick. Lena saw right through you. She knew you'd never amount to anything." The crowd around us had stopped eating to watch. Phones came out, recording everything. This was either going to be the best decision I'd made all day or the worst. "You're right," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm just a guy trying to make honest food for honest people. I can't compete with trust fund babies and their fancy equipment." Eric's sneer widened. Finally admitting the truth. "The truth is, I don't need to sabotage other people's generators to make my food taste good." His face went pale. Around us, the crowd murmured with interest. Someone called out, "What's he talking about?" "Nothing," Eric said quickly. I'm just saying that when you have to cheat to win, maybe you're not as good as you think you are." Eric lunged forward, trying to grab me, but his expensive shoes slipped on the grass. He stumbled backward, arms windmilling, and crashed into a display of sauce containers behind their booth. Red marinara splashed across his pristine white coat as he landed hard on his backside. The crowd burst into laughter and applause. Phones captured every second of his humiliation. Within hours, the video would be all over social media with captions like, "Trust fund chef gets served." Lena appeared, her face a mask of barely controlled rage. She helped Eric to his feet while shooting daggers at me with her eyes. "This isn't over," she hissed. "No," I agreed. "It's just getting started." The fake health inspection came exactly as Sam had predicted, but we were ready. Maya had spent the previous evening scrubbing every surface until the kitchen gleamed. I'd organized our storage areas, checked expiration dates, and made sure every piece of equipment met or exceeded health department standards. When the inspector arrived at 11 a.m. sharp, we welcomed him like an old friend. "Routine inspection," he announced, though his nervous glances toward the street suggested otherwise. Through the window, I could see Lena sitting in her car, phone pressed to her ear. "Of course," I said cheerfully. "We're always happy to demonstrate our commitment to food safety." The inspector, a thin man named Peterson who kept checking his watch, started with the refrigeration units. Everything was properly labeled and stored at correct temperatures. He moved to the prep areas, looking increasingly frustrated as he failed to find violations that should have been obvious. "Your hand-washing station seems adequate," he said, as if admitting defeat. "Maya insisted on the upgrade last month," I replied. "She's very particular about hygiene standards." Maya beamed at him. "Food safety is everyone's responsibility." Peterson spent 2 hours searching for problems that didn't exist. By the time he left with a grudging approval rating, word had already spread through the neighborhood. Mrs. O'Malley from the apartment upstairs had watched the whole thing from her window and was already on the phone with her sister. "That inspector looked disappointed," she told me later, "like he came here expecting to find rats in the pantry." "Just doing his job," I replied, though we both knew better. That evening, I was closing up when Sam appeared with a manila envelope. "Present for you," he said, sliding it across the counter. Inside were photographs of Peterson meeting with Eric at a coffee shop, an envelope changing hands between them. The timestamps showed the meeting had occurred 2 days before the inspection. "How did you—" "I've been watching them since our conversation," Sam explained. "Peterson's been supplementing his city salary with private consulting work. Technically legal, but ethically questionable when it involves targeting specific businesses." "What do you want to do with this?" I studied the photos, thinking about Lena's confident expression as she'd watched from her car, expecting to see me shut down and humiliated. The same expression she'd worn when she told me she was leaving. "I want to return the favor," I said finally. The next morning, I called Jenna Walsh. "I have a story for you," I told her, "about corruption in the health department and the restaurant industry." She arrived within an hour, notebook ready. I showed her Sam's photographs and explained the timeline, the fake inspection, Peterson's financial arrangement with Eric, the obvious attempt to sabotage a legitimate business. "This is serious," Jenna said, studying the evidence. "If I publish this, Peterson's career is over. Your brother-in-law's reputation takes a major hit too." "Ex-brother-in-law," I corrected. "And yes, I understand the consequences." "Why come to me instead of going to the police?" "Because the police would investigate quietly and maybe file charges eventually. You'll make sure everyone knows what really happened." Jenna's article ran 3 days later with the headline, "Health Inspector Caught in Bribery Scheme." Peterson was suspended pending investigation. Eric and Lena's Bistro was subjected to a surprise inspection by Peterson's supervisor. A thorough examination that found several legitimate violations they'd been ignoring. But the real damage was to their reputation. The story painted Eric as a spoiled rich kid who couldn't compete fairly, and Lena as the manipulative partner pulling strings behind the scenes. Their social media accounts were flooded with negative comments. Reservations at Harper Co. dropped by 60% overnight. I was cleaning up after the dinner service when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Enjoying your little victory? It won't last. We're just getting started." Maya looked up from the dishwasher. "Trouble?" "Nothing I can't handle," I said, but privately I wondered what they'd try next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 2 nights later, I was leaving the restaurant around midnight when I noticed my car sitting lower than usual. All 4 tires had been slashed, the cuts clean and deliberate. A note was tucked under the windshield wiper. "Accidents happen." I called Sam, who arrived with a tow truck and a grim expression. "They're escalating," he observed, examining the tire damage. "This isn't about business anymore, it's personal." "It was always personal," I replied. I just didn't want to admit it. Sam helped me arrange alternative transportation and security cameras for the restaurant. But as I lay awake that night, I realized something had shifted. For months, I'd been reacting to their moves, playing defense while they attacked. But defense doesn't win games. It was time to go on offense. The opportunity came from an unexpected source. Allison, Lena's supposed best friend and social media manager. She showed up at my restaurant on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, looking nervous and overdressed in designer clothes that probably cost more than most people's rent. I recognized her from the endless photos on Lena's Instagram, always posing with drinks and fake smiles. "We need to talk," she said, sliding into a corner booth. I poured 2 coffees and waited. Allison had the jittery energy of someone about to betray a confidence. "Lena doesn't know I'm here," she began, "but I thought you should know what they're planning." "I'm listening." "There's a party this weekend. Some investors Eric's been courting, food industry people, potential partners. They're planning to use it to destroy your reputation completely." She pulled out her phone and showed me a group text thread. Lena's messages outlined a plan to spread rumors about my restaurant, food poisoning incidents that never happened, health violations that had been fabricated, stories about my supposed drinking problem and unstable behavior. Why are you showing me this? I asked. Allison's composure cracked slightly. Because I'm tired of being Lena's attack dog. She treats everyone like they're disposable, including me. And because what they're doing to you isn't just wrong, it's stupid. Your restaurant is actually good. Theirs is all flash and no substance. What do you want in return? Help me start my own PR firm. I have clients who are getting tired of Lena's methods. They'd follow me if I had somewhere to go. I studied her carefully. This could be a trap, another layer in their scheme to destroy me. But the desperation in her eyes seemed genuine, and the text messages were too detailed to be fake. Tell me about this party, I said. The event was being held at a converted warehouse in the Arts District, the kind of trendy space that looked industrial but cost a fortune to rent. Eric had invited 50 of the city's most influential food industry figures, planning to position himself as the rising star while painting me as a jealous failure. They're going to have people planted in the crowd, Allison explained. Fake testimonials about terrible experiences at your restaurant. By the end of the night, no one in the industry will want to work with you. Unless we get there first, I said slowly. Allison's eyes lit up. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to serve them a taste of their own medicine. The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. Allison would provide me with the guest list and layout of the venue. I would prepare a selection of my best dishes and arrange for them to be served at the party, not through the official caterer, but through carefully placed allies among the waitstaff. Sam helped coordinate the logistics, using his investigative contacts to verify the backgrounds of key guests. Maya prepared the food with military precision, creating portions that showcased everything our restaurant did best. This is either brilliant or insane, she said, packing the last container. Probably both. The night of the party, I arrived early and positioned myself at a coffee shop across the street. Through the large windows, I could see the warehouse filling with elegantly dressed people. Food critics, restaurant owners, investors, and social media influencers. Eric and Lena held sway near the center of the room, both dressed in matching black outfits that likely cost more than my monthly rent. They looked confident, at ease, prepared to strike the final blow to my reputation. At 8 p.m., the servers began circulating with my food. I watched through binoculars as guests tasted my dishes. The same burger that had impressed Jenna Walsh at the food festival, sliders made with locally sourced ingredients, and my signature mac and cheese that had become a customer favorite. The reactions were immediate and positive. People asked questions, requested seconds, and began talking animatedly about the flavors. Eric's expression shifted from confidence to confusion as he realized something was wrong. This wasn't the food he'd ordered from his usual high-end caterer. These were dishes he recognized, dishes from his despised brother's restaurant. By 9 p.m., the room was buzzing with conversation about the unexpected culinary experience. Several food bloggers were already posting photos and reviews on social media. Jenna Walsh was taking notes and asking servers about the source of the food. That's when Lena made her move. She climbed onto a small stage at one end of the warehouse and called for attention. The room gradually quieted, expecting some kind of announcement or toast. Thank you all for coming tonight, she began, her voice carrying that practiced confidence I remembered from our marriage. Eric and I are so grateful for your support as we build something special in this city. Murmurs of approval from the crowd. So far, so good for their plan. Unfortunately, Lena continued, we need to address some concerning rumors that have been circulating about certain establishments in our industry, specifically reports of food safety violations, unprofessional behavior, and questionable business practices by competitors who seem more interested in revenge than quality. She was looking directly at the window where I sat, though I knew she couldn't actually see me in the darkness. But her words were clearly aimed at me, setting up the character assassination Allison had warned me about. In fact, Lena said, warming to her theme, We've received multiple reports about a particular restaurant that has been cutting corners on food safety, using substandard ingredients, and creating hostile environments for both staff and customers. That's when Jenna Walsh stood up. "Excuse me," the food critic called out, her voice cutting through Lena's speech. "Are you talking about the Junction? Because if you are, I think this crowd deserves to know that we've been eating their food all evening, and it's been exceptional." The room erupted in surprised conversation. Guests looked around, suddenly understanding the source of the impressive dishes they'd been enjoying. Several people pulled out their phones, checking social media posts they'd made praising the food. Lena's face went pale, then flushed red. "That's impossible. You hired a caterer who apparently has excellent taste in subcontractors," Jenna interrupted. "Because every dish I've sampled tonight demonstrates the kind of quality and attention to detail that your own restaurant seems to lack." Eric stepped forward, trying to salvage the situation. "There must be some mistake." "The only mistake," called out a voice from the back of the room, "was thinking you could sabotage honest competition instead of improving your own product." The speaker was David Chen, owner of 3 successful restaurants and one of the most respected figures in the local food scene. His endorsement could make or break careers. "I've eaten at both establishments," Chen continued. "Harper Co serves overpriced mediocrity to people who care more about being seen than tasting quality food. The Junction serves the kind of honest, skillful cooking that built this industry." The crowd was turning, and Lena could sense it. Her carefully planned character assassination was backfiring spectacularly, exposing her own restaurant's shortcomings instead of damaging mine. "This is ridiculous," she snapped, abandoning her practiced composure. "Nick Harper is a failed corporate drone who can't accept that better people have moved beyond him. He's been stalking us, sabotaging our business, and now he's crashed our private event like some kind of obsessed ex-husband." The room went quiet. Lena had just revealed more about her motivations than she'd intended, making it clear that this was personal vendetta rather than professional concern. Jenna Walsh was taking notes rapidly. This was turning into a much better story than she'd expected. "Well," Chen said dryly, "if this is what obsession looks like, maybe more restaurateurs should try it. This food is outstanding." The party continued, but the energy had completely shifted. Guests clustered around the servers, asking about the Junction's location and hours. Several people approached me as I finally entered the warehouse, introducing themselves and expressing interest in collaboration or investment. Eric and Lena stood near the stage, watching their carefully planned evening collapse around them. When Lena spotted me across the room, her expression was pure hatred. She pushed through the crowd, Eric trailing behind her, and confronted me near the entrance. "You think you're so clever," she hissed, keeping her voice low enough to avoid attracting more attention. "You think this changes anything?" I replied calmly, "that people can taste the difference between real food and expensive pretense. This isn't over, Nick. Not even close." "No," I agreed. "It's not. But for the first time since this whole mess started, I was looking forward to the next round." The morning after the warehouse party, my phone started ringing before dawn. Food bloggers, potential investors, and customers who'd heard about the previous night's drama all wanted to talk. Maya arrived to find me fielding calls while prepping for what promised to be our busiest day yet. "You look like you haven't slept," she observed, tying her apron with practiced efficiency. "Haven't had time," I admitted, hanging up from a conversation with a food magazine editor. 3 interviews scheduled for this afternoon, and we're booked solid through next weekend. Good problems to have. But I knew Lena and Eric wouldn't take their humiliation quietly. The question was what they'd try next. The answer came that afternoon in the form of Paul Morrison, Eric's so-called business manager and college roommate. He appeared during the lunch rush, wearing an expensive suit and the kind of smug expression that made me want to check my wallet. "Nick, he called out from the dining room. "We need to discuss business." I finished plating an order and walked over to his table. Paul was the type who'd never worked a real job in his life. Everything handed to him through family connections and inherited wealth. "What can I do for you, Paul?" "It's what I can do for you," he replied, pulling out a folder. "I'm here with an offer from Harper Co. We're prepared to buy out your lease and equipment for a generous sum, enough to pay off your debts and start fresh somewhere else." "Not interested." "You should look at the numbers before deciding." He slid a contract across the table. "This is more money than you'll make in 5 years at your current rate." I glanced at the offer. It was substantial, enough to clear my loans and leave me with a decent nest egg. But accepting would mean admitting defeat, letting them win through checkbook intimidation. "Still not interested?" Paul's smile turned cold. "That's unfortunate, because we're prepared to make things very difficult for you if you won't be reasonable." "Meaning?" "Meaning we have resources you don't. Connections, influence, the ability to make problems appear where none existed before. The health inspection was just the beginning." He was threatening me openly now, confident that I had no way to fight back. What he didn't know was that Sam had been recording the conversation from a nearby table, capturing every word of Paul's attempted extortion. "I'll take my chances," I said. Paul stood, straightening his tie. "Your choice. But don't say we didn't offer you an easy way out." After he left, Sam joined me at the table. "Arrogant little weasel," he muttered, checking his recording equipment. "But he just gave us everything we need to file harassment charges." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe we can use this another way." That evening, I called a meeting with my lawyer, a sharp woman named Janet Phillips, who specialized in small business issues. I'd hired her when I first opened the restaurant, mainly for lease negotiations and permit applications. Now I needed her expertise for something more complex. "They're trying to force you out through intimidation," she concluded after reviewing Sam's recording. "Legally, we have grounds for a harassment complaint, but that could take months to resolve." "What about going on offense?" Janet raised an eyebrow. "What do you have in mind?" I'd been thinking about this since Paul's visit, turning over possibilities and looking for leverage I could use. The answer came from an unexpected source, Mrs. O'Malley, my elderly neighbor who seemed to know everything that happened in the neighborhood. "That building where the fancy bistro is," she'd mentioned casually a few days earlier, "used to be owned by the Kowalski family. They sold it last month to some investment company." Investment companies were usually faceless entities, but Sam's research had revealed something interesting. The company that bought Eric's building was owned by a larger firm that specialized in restaurant properties. More importantly, they were actively looking to expand their portfolio with successful, established businesses. The plan that emerged was audacious and risky, but it had the potential to end this war definitively. Using a shell company Janet helped me establish, I made an offer to purchase Eric's building. Not to evict them immediately, but to gain control over their operating costs and lease terms. If they wanted to play hardball with resources and connections, I'd show them what real leverage looked like. The negotiation took 2 weeks. The investment company was happy to sell to another restaurant industry player, especially one with growing revenue and positive media attention. The price was steep, most of my savings plus a loan that would keep me awake nights for years to come. But the strategic value was immense. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon. Eric and Lena had no idea their landlord had changed until Janet served them with new lease terms on Monday morning. I was at the restaurant when Eric burst through the door, his face purple with rage. "You son of a—" He caught himself as customers turned to stare. "We need to talk. Now!" I followed him outside where Lena waited by their car. She looked like she'd been crying, though whether from anger or desperation was hard to tell. "How?" she demanded. "How did you afford to buy our building?" "Same way you afforded to open a restaurant," I replied. "Loans, investors, and believing in what I'm building." "This is insane," Eric sputtered. "You can't just—" "Actually, I can. You wanted to play with big money and serious consequences. Congratulations, you're getting both. The new lease terms were harsh, but legal. Triple the rent, month to month instead of long-term, and strict compliance requirements for everything from noise levels to waste disposal. They could meet the terms and stay, or they could leave and find somewhere else to set up shop. You're destroying us, Lena said quietly. No, I replied. I'm giving you the same chance you gave me. Sink or swim based on the quality of what you're offering. Eric stepped forward, his hands clenched into fists. For a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. But then he seemed to remember we were standing on a public street in broad daylight. This isn't over, he said instead. You keep saying that, I observed, but you're running out of moves. They drove away without another word, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with the strangest feeling I'd had in months. Not satisfaction exactly, but something close to it. The feeling of finally fighting back instead of just taking punishment. That night, I was closing up when Maya found me in the kitchen, staring at the lease documents. Second thoughts? She asked. Third and fourth thoughts, I admitted. This could backfire completely. If their restaurant fails, I'm stuck with an empty building and a massive loan. Or, Maya said, they could surprise everyone and actually start cooking decent food to meet the higher rent. You think that's likely? She laughed, the sound echoing off the stainless steel surfaces. Have you tasted their food lately? They'd have to fire Eric and start over from scratch. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. For them or for you? I thought about that question as I locked up and walked to my car. 6 months ago, I would have said I wanted them to succeed, that I just wanted fair competition and mutual respect. But 6 months of attacks, sabotage, and humiliation had changed something fundamental in me. Now I wanted them to understand what it felt like to fight for survival. I wanted them to experience the fear of losing everything they'd built, the desperation of watching their dreams crumble while their enemies celebrated. I wanted them to know exactly how I'd felt when Lena walked out and Eric stole my family name for their restaurant. The war was far from over, but for the first time, I was winning. 3 weeks after the lease revelation, Harper Co closed permanently. They'd tried to meet the new rent demands, even attempted to improve their food quality, but the damage to their reputation was too severe. The warehouse party disaster had made them a laughingstock in industry circles, and customers stayed away in droves. Eric's trust fund couldn't cover losses indefinitely, and Lena's PR expertise was useless when the product itself was fundamentally flawed. I learned about the closure from Jenna Walsh, who called for a comment on her follow-up story. Any thoughts on your former competitors shutting down? She asked. I wish them well in their future endeavors, I replied, though we both knew it was a polite lie. The truth was more complicated. Part of me felt vindicated. They'd started this war with sabotage and personal attacks, and they'd lost decisively. But another part felt hollow, like winning hadn't brought the satisfaction I'd expected. That changed when I found Eric waiting in my restaurant after closing time. He'd somehow gotten past the locked front door and was sitting at the bar, a bottle of expensive whiskey open beside him. He looked terrible, unshaven, wrinkled clothes, eyes red from drinking or crying or both. How did you get in here? Back door was unlocked, he slurred, though I knew that wasn't true. Eric had probably learned some breaking and entering skills during his recent descent into desperation. You need to leave. Not until we settle this. He stood unsteadily, swaying slightly. You destroyed everything. My restaurant, my relationship with Lena, my reputation, everything. You destroyed your own restaurant by serving terrible food. You destroyed your relationship with Lena by being a trust fund baby who never learned to work for anything. And you destroyed your reputation by trying to sabotage honest competition instead of improving yourself. Eric laughed bitterly. Honest competition? You bought our building out from under us. You sabotaged our party. You turned the whole industry against us. I gave you exactly what you gave me, I replied. The only difference is I was better at it. That's when he lunged at me. Eric had never been athletic, and months of stress plus whatever he'd been drinking made him clumsy. I sidestepped his charge easily, letting momentum carry him into a stack of chairs. He went down hard, cursing and flailing. Stay down, I warned, but he was already getting back up. You think you won? He growled, a trickle of red staining his forehead. Lena's gone, Nick. She left me, but she's not coming back to you either. She said you're both hopeless fools who deserve each other. I don't want her back. Liar. He swung wildly, missing by inches. This whole thing was about getting revenge on her. Admit it. Maybe he was right. Maybe everything I'd done had been motivated by the need to make them pay for humiliating me, for stealing my dreams and turning them into their own success story. But standing there, watching my younger brother stumble around my restaurant like a broken toy, I realized the revenge had stopped mattering somewhere along the way. You're right, I said. It was about revenge, but not anymore. Then what's it about? It's about building something that matters, something real. Eric stopped swinging and stared at me with red-rimmed eyes. You really believe that nonsense, don't you? You think you're some kind of noble underdog hero. I think I'm a guy who learned to fight back when people tried to destroy him. And now you're destroying me. No, I said quietly. You did that yourself. I just stopped letting you destroy me in the process. Eric stood there for a long moment, breathing heavily. Then something seemed to break inside him. His shoulders sagged, and he stumbled toward the door. This isn't over, he mumbled, but the words had no strength behind them. Yes, I replied. It is. He left without looking back, and I never saw him again. 6 months later, the Junction had expanded to a second location and earned its first major industry award. Maya had been promoted to head chef, and we'd hired a full staff of talented people who believed in what we were building. Lena had moved to another city, trying to rebuild her PR career away from the wreckage of her reputation. Eric had apparently returned to his family's estate, living off trust fund payments and avoiding the restaurant industry entirely. I should have felt triumphant. I'd won completely, decisively, in ways I'd never imagined possible when this whole mess started. My enemies were scattered, my business was thriving, and my reputation in the industry was stronger than ever. But on quiet nights, when the last customer had left and the kitchen was clean, I sometimes thought about the cost of victory. Not the financial cost. The loans would be paid off eventually, and success had its own momentum. The personal cost. I'd learned to fight back, to be ruthless when necessary, to use every weapon at my disposal to protect what I'd built. Those were valuable skills in a competitive industry, but they'd changed something fundamental about who I was. The man who'd married Lena 5 years ago would never have bought his brother's building to force him out of business. That man had believed in fair play, honest competition, and the idea that good work would eventually be rewarded. This man knew better. This man understood that sometimes you have to burn your enemy's dreams to ash before they'll stop trying to burn yours. Standing in my successful restaurant, surrounded by awards and positive reviews and the respect of my peers, I realized that winning and being happy weren't the same thing. But winning was enough. It had to be.